Apple is now the world's most valuable company again. Elon Musk drops his lawsuit against OpenAI, and we now know that the RTX 5090 and the rest of the 50 series might not be dropping until next year. Let's get into the hot news, everybody. I'm your Brett host. We're going to be going over the hottest tech news that I can find on the internet while you enjoy your breakfast this Thursday, April 13th, 2024. We're going to start off today with the big stock market news that Apple is now more valuable than Microsoft. Again, this has been a tit for tat that's been going on back and forth for decades now. Actually, Apple had a little bit of a slide at some point, but these two companies fighting to be the world's most valuable over the last few years has been a mainstay, and Nvidia has been a more recent entry into the second place winner, but it looks like they're getting dropped to third thanks to Apple's announcement of Apple Intelligence. It allowed them to be over $3.3 trillion. Very, very valuable company. This is actually despite the fact that right after all of the Apple Intelligence news, their stock actually fell by quite a little bit, but it seemed like there just needed to be more details that came out from WWDC besides the keynote for people to understand just how radical the moves Apple was making with regards to its AI were in terms of what it's allowing on the device. There was a lot of confusion of, oh, they're just using ChatGPT, when in reality they're using their own models that they built in-house and are using on their own silicon, whether that's on device with your iPhone or your iPad or your Mac, or in the cloud, it's all using Apple Silicon and not using any Nvidia chips, which is a big revelation as well. The thing that every other AI company needs to be successful, Nvidia, is something that Apple is just eschewing in order for them to promote their own tech and show off how good they are. They're still allowing other AI models, but they don't need them in order to feel confident enough to launch their Apple Intelligence to the rest of the people, which I read an article, which is kind of funny in terms of the whole marketing of things. Apple doesn't shorten the term Apple Intelligence. It's just Apple Intelligence. They're not going to ever refer to that as AI. They do mention AI, but that's always in the term of artificial. However, an Apple representative did say that a substitute for Apple Intelligence can be personal intelligence, which is, I think, one of the key derivations that Apple's making for themselves versus everybody else. The AI that you're using, the Apple Intelligence, is going to be personal to you since it has access to everything you're doing on your phone locally, and so it can process all of that and make sure that it's good for you, which is what Microsoft tried to do with Recall, but they didn't have any security baked into that one. So now they're worth less. Haha, suck it, Microsoft, or something, I'm sure Tim Cook is saying. Or he's not even thinking of them at all. But you know who I'm still thinking about? Silverstone. We saw them last week at Computex, and they're sponsoring this episode of Hot News for me to tell you about a few of the things that they're getting up to. Because one of the things that they want you to do, very similar to Apple, is run your own AI. And the way you can do that is by building your own personal little workstation, which is one of the key philosophies of Silverstone moving forward, making chassis and systems that are actually relevant to people who are trying to build out computers that can handle large language models as well as other very intensive tasks that require larger hardware. So some of the philosophy behind that is that a lot of their brand new cases are going to support the SSI EEB motherboard standard for larger boards, as well as the fact that they're going to have dual power supply support in order for you to have power redundancy in order to make sure that whatever workload you're doing can't get interrupted in case one of the power supplies goes down. But additionally, they had a few other things, like they had a single liquid cooler that can actually go onto two different CPUs at the same time for dual socket setups. You combine that with something like their Hella 2500R power supply. That's right, 2500 watts in a single power supply that they had in their Alta D1 system for a total of 5000 watts of delivered power, or 2500 watts redundantly. And you've got a setup that's good for high computation as well as for AI development, as well as the fact that you can get up to 11 PCI Express expansion slots in a single system. But none of this means that Silverstone is abandoning the gamer at all. They had a new lineup of their Farah 514X cases, as well as the SETA A2 and H2 cases, with them coming in stunning visual styles, as well as the SETA A2 supporting rear connector motherboards, which has been a trend in gaming lately. So Silverstone has you covered, whether you're trying to go high power or just regular gaming. sponsoring, you should check them out at the link in the video description. They have a lot of cool stuff coming out later this year. Big thanks to Silverstone for sponsoring this video. And while we're talking about high compute things, it turns out that the lawsuit that Elon Musk filed against OpenAI didn't really compute very well, and so he has officially dropped his lawsuit. The thing that was being contested here was that Elon Musk said that OpenAI violated the founders agreement, saying that they were only going to be for profit and they were going to take his word into consideration and be for the benefit of all humanity. However, they've become a closed source de facto subsidiary to the largest technology company in the world, Microsoft, which is not true anymore. They're a subsidiary of the largest company in the world known as Apple. So slightly different now, but also not a subsidiary in the same way. Microsoft's invested billions of dollars, and at the current moment, it's not clear if OpenAI is paying to get into iPhones or if Apple's paying OpenAI to be put into iPhones. It's not quite certain which way it goes, but one of the things that was certain from the beginning was that a lot of lawyers agreed that this lawsuit from Elon Musk was fiction or farcical. OpenAI called it fiction themselves, and legal experts coming out and saying that Elon Musk would have a hard time proving that this founders agreement actually even existed in the first place, since it wasn't actually provided in any sort of written documentation, but rather allegedly was just a verbal acknowledgement between people behind closed doors, which is going to be a hard burden of proof to have, and it looks like it doesn't matter now. And what definitely doesn't matter on Twitter is what you're liking, because now it's all hidden. You can't see what other people are liking on Twitter because they don't want you to see that, especially if you're a politician liking something that maybe you shouldn't on your professional account. That feature is now gone away. You can still see what you've liked, and other people will show up that they've liked your post in your notifications, but if you go to their page and you click on likes, it's not going to show it, because you might want to be liking edgier content than you do, but you don't because people could see it. So definitely you can do that now. And I think a lot of tech YouTubers who like the HTC tweet about the fact that they were coming out with a new phone yesterday, they might want to take that one back, because we finally got the new HTC phone unveiled, and it's exactly as I speculated it would be, which is a continuation of the phone they came out with last year. For some reason, people think HTC doesn't make phones anymore. They're not LG. HTC has continued to release a smartphone nearly every single year. In 2022, they came out with a metaverse phone. Last year, they came out with the U23 Pro, and now they have the U24 Pro. It's a mid-tier smartphone, and in fact, this one's actually only launching in Taiwan, so it's not super special. It's 6.8-inch full HD OLED panel with a 4600 milliamp hour battery, a 50 megapixel camera. It's going to cost around $600 at least once it's converted from Taiwanese dollars, and it's going to launch June 30th in Taiwan. That tweet was a nothing burger. HTC never died. They just stopped being relevant to most people, and that one tweet did not make them any more relevant. But hopefully Reece has some relevant deals for you, because he better. That's what he's supposed to do.
Yo, welcome back to UFD Deals, bringing the hottest tech deals out on the internet. I hope you guys are doing well, and deals, because that's kind of what we do here. And starting off today, we have this summer 24-pin addressable RGB power extension cable for only $31.99, making it $38, and a nice way to spice up your system. But then next up, we have this EpoMaker EK68 65% wireless mechanical keyboard, available in this black and purple colorway for only $53.54 with a coupon applied, making it $54.44 off. And then lastly, we have another Ryzen 5000 series processor with the Ryzen 9 5900X going for only $249. A great way to max out that core count on your AIM-4 system if you're still rocking that, and hey, for that price, let's go. And with that, the deals are done. You can find these and more linked in the video description down below, but until next time, I'm gonna hand you off back to Brett for the rest of your hot news. Cheers.
Well, Google's got a deal for Pixel owners, Reece. In case you have a Pixel 8 phone, one of the latest updates that's come out is that USB-C on those Pixel 8 series phones can now support DisplayPort. So you can actually connect your Pixel phone to a TV or a monitor, and it does USB-C DisplayPort. It's all good stuff, but one of the things that this is kind of a harbinger of to come later on is the rumored Android desktop mode that's supposed to potentially be launching in the next iteration of Android. It's something that's been kind of hidden behind the scenes, this desktop mode. It actually looks pretty robust and being useful to anybody who's trying to get a more workable desktop environment on their Pixel phone, but this new USB-C DisplayPort appears to be making it slightly more realistic that it's going to come out sometime soon, which is not what's going to be happening with the next generation graphics cards. AMD, we don't know when they're coming out with the RX 8000 series. Battlemage, allegedly maybe sometime later this year. Nvidia, we were thinking that it was going to come out sometime later this year, potentially not till late Q4, but now it turns out SK Hynix, the company that's making GDDR7 that's supposed to go into Nvidia's GPUs, has come out and said that they're not going to get into mass production until next year. Micron's one of the largest companies that does supply VRAM chips to Nvidia, so the fact that they're not making it to mass production until next year doesn't bode well for the fact that Nvidia is going to meet the market later this year. Additionally, there's been kind of rumors indicating that the 50 series might not make it in Q4. It was potentially going to be delayed till Q1. A lot of people were hearing that from different vendors across the Computex show floor. AnandTech got to interview somebody from SK Hynix indicating that, yeah, Q1 2025 appears to be when mass production will take place. Now, there are a couple of other companies that do make GDDR7 modules, Samsung and Micron, and they're all allegedly supplying samples to Nvidia right now for those GPUs, but the fact that one of the major manufacturers is not hitting the market till next year doesn't bode well for all of these GPUs coming out later this year. I would potentially, this is just some recommendation, hold off on thinking that you're going to be upgrading this year. It doesn't appear like Nvidia has a lot of incentive to try to rush a card out, especially with AMD not really competing with them on the desktop side of things. Additionally, the RTX 4090 is still continuously sold out in a lot of different varying regions, so them having the time to build out the robust ecosystem for GDDR7 seems to make a little bit of sense. It's not necessarily a guarantee that they won't launch later this year. Maybe there's going to be enough from Samsung and Micron to come out with a 5090, but I would not hold your breath. That stock is going to be good at least until sometime next year. And let's see if your comments were any good from yesterday's episode of Hot News. We got 00 Driz 00. Is that like BBL Drizzy? Saying, the reason I think AMD has not released the X3D variant of the 9000 series is because they want to release it when Intel release Ariel Lake to steal a little thunder, which I've speculated as well. I've mentioned that here on the show, that one of the reasons that they would hold off is because they want to come closer to the Arrow Lake launch. I think one of the things that I'll get into in further comments is just the idea that they had to release the Ryzen 9000 chips now at all. There doesn't appear to be much sense in launching them not all at the same time closer to Arrow Lake's launch. Because one of the things that a lot of people pointed out when I talked about, hey, why release the regular 9000 series while a lot of people are going to be waiting for the X3D chips? There was things like people saying that the regular CPUs are way better for just like regular computing tasks. That was a very common comment that I got across Hot News yesterday, and I think maybe I just didn't provide enough clarity that I do think the regular 9000 series chips should exist. I understand that, yes, they perform better in productivity examples. Not by a ton. There were some comments where people were like, the X3D chips are trash when it comes to productivity, which is not true at all. The 7800 X3D is close enough to the 7700X that, like, for the extra gaming performance, it can make a lot of sense to just go with the X3D chip, even if you use it for productivity. But regardless, the 9700X deserves to exist next to a 9800 X3D or whatever the heck they're going to call it. The problem that I'm seeing right here is just the timeline of events. It serves nobody to release the 9000 series right now when you have a robust 7000 series that honestly hasn't penetrated the market as deeply as it possibly could, and then come out with a X3D launch, which is the one that a lot of gamers are going to want to upgrade to, when you could potentially just have a much more full and robust lineup at the exact same time. Doing a 2-month staggered launch just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, especially because the drip of information of AMD trying to wait to reveal that the 9000 series isn't as good as the 7800 X3D makes it feel like they have something to hide, that they're not as confident in the 9000 series, which I think you could just get rid of that if you had them all launching at the same time. But again, I'm not behind a multi-billion-dollar industry trying to market CPUs to people, so the fact that they're doing it, sure, I guess could make sense. I do think the 9700X should exist. I get why the non-X3D chips do still have a place in the market because they're better at productivity. I just also think that when you look at the sales numbers for the Ryzen 7000 series, the 7800X3D was the chip that made it popular. It wasn't the rest of them. The 7700X did not hit the market like the 7800X3D did, because despite the fact that not everybody needs the chip for gaming, a lot of people upgraded to the X3D chips because of how much better they were. Then we got David saying they're exclusively using their own silicon. That seems like quite the undertaking. Kind of makes me wonder if Siri will ever catch up without the assistance of partners like OpenAI. Well, I think that was one of the things that took a while to become understood from the WWDC further sessions that they had, because they didn't really make this super clear when it came to their keynote, but they are using their own silicon locally, and they're using their own models locally. Then they're also using their own models and their own silicon in the cloud. And just based on Apple's own published internal research, it does look like Siri should be fairly competent when it comes to competing with OpenAI. But I think for as much crap as people want to give Apple for being a closed down ecosystem, I think them opening up their iOS and iPadOS operating systems to support further AI models natively in their system makes them pretty open. When you're talking about how much they've locked down other experiences in the past, it doesn't look like they're necessarily having that approach when it comes to AI models. They'll provide you with their own, which from their own data seems like it's going to serve in most use cases, but in the cases where you want to use ChatGPT 4.0, you're going to be able to for free. And then lastly, we got Driz saying the 360 AIO is not overkill for the 5700X3D. It's just stupid. A simple 120mm one Tor cooler can cool it easy. You just described what overkill means. The 360 is too much because something lesser would simply suffice. That is the definition of what overkill is. You just said it's not overkill because it's overkill. Buddy, what terms are, how do you define overkill? Yeah, it's stupid because it's too much. We're on the same page. We're talking about the same thing here. And I'm not talking to you anymore because I'm done with hot news. I'll see you back here for more of the Haas Tech News tomorrow.